You're listening to The Bountiful Yogi, a podcast where soul meets practice and where we explore what it means to live, lead, and love from a place of deep alignment. I'm Heather, and I created this space as part of Sea Life as a Muse, a platform for storytelling, healing, and embodiment for people who feel deeply and are doing their best to live with intention. Whether you're a seeker, a healer, a teacher, a creative, or someone simply navigating the world with an open heart, I'm so glad you're here. However you got here, welcome. And if you're returning, welcome back. It means the world to me that you're here. These episodes are meant to be short and digestible, little pockets of perspective. And if you feel inclined, you can read the blog that inspired today's episode at sealifeasamuse.com or on Substack. Let's take a breath together and begin. Today's episode is a big one. It's something I've been sitting with for a while, and honestly, it's not always easy to talk about. We're diving into language, specifically how words are being weaponized right now, twisted, distorted, and used to divide rather than connect, and how we, as conscious beings, and especially as students or teachers of yoga, need to pay attention. Because language isn't neutral, it never has been. The spiritual weight of words. There's an old saying, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me." And I think most of us know by now that's not true. Words have shaped laws. Words have launched wars. Words have erased people, justified harm, and built entire systems, both oppressive and liberating. In yogic philosophy, the yamas and niyamas offer us a moral compass. They guide how we engage with the world, not just how we behave privately. Let's start with Ahimsa, non-harming. When we use language that shames, excludes, or reduces someone to a stereotype, that is harm. Whether it's whispered gossip or a policy-changing slogan, it carries weight. Then there's Satya, truthfulness. Satya is not just about avoiding lies, it's about speaking what is real, just, and aligned with higher awareness. And right now, as a culture, we're not doing that. Words are being cherry-picked from sacred texts or historical documents to justify fear, control, and exclusion. Let's look at some of the words being twisted in today's climate. Undocumented. This word gets replaced all too often with illegal or alien. Those labels carry fear. They erase a person's story and reduce them to paperwork or worse, to a threat. But undocumented doesn't mean someone has no documents. Many people file taxes every year using something called an ITIN, an individual taxpayer identification number. They pay into Social Security and Medicare, systems they'll never benefit from, contributing billions each year. They hold pay stubs, school records, medical files, rental contracts, and IDs from their home country consulates. Undocumented simply means without federally recognized immigration status. And legally, being here without status is not a felony, it's a misdemeanor handled in immigration courts. When we call someone illegal, we're not just mislabeling them, we're stripping their humanity. Yoga reminds us through Ahimsa, non-harming, that our words can either wound or dignify. And Satya, truthfulness, asks us to tell the fuller story. These are human beings already woven into our communities, working, raising families, contributing. Freedom. We love this word. We sing it, protest with it, print it on bumper stickers. But we have to ask, whose freedom are we really protecting? Without brahmacharya, moderation, and mindful discipline. Freedom can easily turn into entitlement. True freedom is not, I get to do whatever I want, no matter the cost. That's not freedom. That's disregard. True freedom is responsibility, and accountability. It's the ability to make choices about our own bodies, our own lives, and our own faith, while also being accountable for how those choices ripple out into the lives of others. Freedom is the right to worship how we are called, to love whom we love, to live without fear of being silenced or erased. But freedom is never entitlement. It is a sacred trust carried with responsibility. And here's where it gets tricky. Freedom is often confused with rights and privilege. Rights are the basic protections every human being deserves. Privilege is the extra access some people have that others do not. But freedom? Freedom requires accountability. Freedom asks us to use our choices in ways that uphold dignity for all. So when we invoke freedom, yoga invites us to pause and ask, freedom for who? Freedom at whose expense? Am I claiming freedom as a right for everyone or as a privilege for myself? Because in its truest form, freedom is not entitlement. Freedom is responsibility. Freedom is accountability. Patriot. For some, patriot means waving a flag. For others, it feels like a warning, a word used to divide, intimidate, or question whether someone is American enough. But patriotism is not blind allegiance. A true patriot doesn't just celebrate their country when it's convenient, they hold it accountable when it falls short. They seek truth even when it's uncomfortable. In this way, patriotism and yoga are not so different. Satya, truthfulness, calls us to speak what is real, not what is convenient. And Ahimsa, non harming, calls us to love deeply enough that we don't allow harm to continue unchallenged. A patriot who turns away from injustice is not serving their country, they are serving their comfort. A patriot who denies dignity to others is not protecting freedom, they are protecting power. True patriotism is devotion paired with responsibility. It is love with truth woven through it. It is the courage to say, we can do better because we are better than this. And maybe this is the real question we need to ask. Are we patriots of land and flag alone, or patriots of people, justice, and truth? Because love without truth is not love at all. And patriotism that excludes others is not patriotism. It is fear wearing a mask. Pro life. So often, pro life gets worn like a badge of morality, but too often it is used not to protect life, but to exert control. If we are truly for life, then that care must extend far beyond birth. It must include health care for the sick and vulnerable, food and housing security for families in need, education that nurtures mind and spirit, safety from gun violence, reproductive autonomy, the right to make decisions about one's own body. Otherwise, what we are protecting is not life, it's power. From the yogic lens, restricting someone else's body under the banner of life violates ahimsa, non harming, and aparigraha, non possessiveness. Because if we're honest, much of what gets called pro life is really pro birth. True reverence for life means honoring all life. The unborn child, yes, but also the person who cannot afford cancer treatment, the family that struggles to keep food on the table, the people living under bombs in a war zone, the refugee searching for safety, the earth itself sustaining us all. To be truly pro life is to recognize that all life is precious and sacred. And yoga calls us to remember this wider circle of care, to live in a way that protects and uplifts life in all its forms, not just selectively. Awakening and woke. Long before woke became a word in English, the idea of awakening was already alive in spiritual traditions across the world. Yoga and Vedanta in India, thousands of years ago, spoke of moksha, liberation, and samadhi, union. These words described awakening, seeing clearly, being free from illusion. In the Bhagavad Gita, the awakened one isn't boastful. They're calm, steady, and rooted in truth. Buddhism, over 2,500 years ago, gave us the very word Buddha, the awakened one. Here, awakening is about seeing reality as it is, free from clinging, fear, and delusion. Indigenous traditions around the world, also thousands of years old, speak of awakening in their own ways, remembering, seeing with clear eyes, living in right relation with all beings. This kind of awakening isn't just personal, it's about remembering our interconnectedness within the great web of life. And across all of these traditions, awakening isn't a label. It's not something you wear like a badge. It's a practice, a state of awareness, and it almost always carries humility with it. Fast forward to the 20th century, and we hear a new expression: stay woke. This phrase arose from African American communities, carrying that same universal wisdom into the language of survival. To stay woke meant don't fall asleep to racism, don't be blind to oppression. Staying awake could literally mean the difference between life and death. Over time, woke expanded. It began to mean staying awake to many forms of injustice, not just racial. At its heart, it was always about compassion, clarity, and responsibility. But today, the word has been twisted, tossed around sarcastically, used as an insult. And here's the irony: the people who are genuinely waking up, who are growing in awareness, who are seeking truth, don't need to label themselves woke. Awakening is not a brand or a trend, it's an inner process, a sacred journey. In yoga, the word bodhi means awakening. The entire yogic path is about becoming more conscious, shedding illusion, seeing clearly. Those who walk this path don't have to call themselves awakened. Their lives begin to reflect it. So when woke is used today, often the only ones claiming the word are those who use it as an insult. Those who are actually awakening don't need the label at all, because awareness, by its nature, speaks through presence, through compassion, through the way we live. And this is the thread that ties it all together, from moksha to samadhi, from Buddha to Bodhi, from indigenous remembering to stay woke. Across time and culture, the message is the same: do not fall asleep to truth. Yoga calls us back to this truth. Awakening doesn't need a label, it is a lifelong practice. Transgender. This word has become so politicized, so twisted, that it's often used as a weapon instead of a truth. But being transgender is not a fad, not a political stunt, not a debate topic. It is a person's deep inner knowing of who they are. History shows us that transgender and non binary people have always existed across cultures, across centuries. From the Hydra of South Asia to Two Spirit people in many indigenous nations, to countless sacred traditions that honor gender beyond a binary. This is not new. What's new is the way language is being manipulated to make it seem unnatural. Yoga gives us the gift of svadhyaya, self study. It teaches us to look within, to know ourselves deeply, and to live in alignment with that truth. What could be more sacred than someone doing exactly that? To reduce transgender people to stereotypes or to argue over their right to exist is to deny that sacred knowing. It is to choose ignorance over awareness and control over compassion. And here's something worth remembering: people who are truly living in their authenticity don't need a label to prove it. Their presence speaks it, their wholeness radiates it. It's only when fear and politics distort the conversation that transgender becomes a battleground word. From a yogic perspective, the path of awakening is always about dissolving illusion and honoring truth. To respect transgender people is to practice Satya, truthfulness, and Ahimsa, non harming. To deny them is to step out of alignment with both. So when we hear the word transgender, yoga invites us to hold it not as an argument, but as a reflection of courage, the courage to live one's truth fully, the courage we are all called to embody in our own ways. Words are not neutral. They never have been. They can bridge divides or burn them down. They can heal or humiliate. They can liberate or erase. Yoga calls us to use language as practice, to let our words be rooted in Ahimsa, non harming, Satya, truthfulness, Brahmacharya, mindful discipline, moderation, aparigraha, non possessiveness, letting go of grasping, svadhyaya, self study, and reflection. These principles are part of the 8 limbs of yoga, a framework given to us not just for moving our bodies, but for guiding our whole lives. They remind us that yoga is not separate from how we speak, how we act, or how we build community. These are not abstract concepts, they are living practices. They are ways of remembering that every word we choose carries energy, intention, and impact. Because if we don't shape language with love and awareness, someone else will shape it for us, and we've already seen where that leads. So today, may your words be your offering. May they reflect not just what you believe, but who you are becoming. And may they create the kind of world we are all worthy of living in. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear how it lands. You can find me and the full community over at Sea Life as a Muse on Substack, Blue Sky, and Discord. That's where I share weekly reflections, voice notes, meditations, and behind the scenes thoughts on this journey of healing and alignment. You can also read the blog that inspired this episode and explore more ways to engage with this work at sealifeasamuse.com or Substack. The link is in the description. This podcast is part of that living library, rooted in story, shaped by practice, and led by heart. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. Until next time, stay bountiful and always see life as a muse.